Okay, welcome to Girlfright, the new podcast on Big Condo Online. I'm Annie Smith and I'm joined here by Rachael. I am a stereotypical horror fan, I would think. Rachael is not. Rachael is unfamiliar with much of the genre. Is that fair to say?
That is completely fair to say. I am a lifetime scaredy cat for as long as I can remember. Generally, I remember going to the cinema when I was younger and I would close my eyes and put my fingers in my ears. Like, not just one thing. I had to do both. So this is definitely going to be an eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah, I spent most of my childhood crawling into my mum's bed to watch horror films with her in the early 90s. So I think it's going to be an interesting contrast. I'm interested to see a beginner's view on some of the things that I've watched my whole life and I'm really familiar with.
Yeah, when you... me and Annie have been friends for quite a long time, and when she first told me that she grew up basically just as a child watching horror movies in bed with her mum, that's just something that's
alien to you.
Literally alien sometimes, I'm sure. But
so anyway, today we're going to be discussing two films, both of which originated from Clive Brker material. The first of which is Hellraiser and the second is Candyman. The originals we're talking about, Hellraiser 1987 and Candyman is 1992, I believe. I chose these. I'm a lifelong fan of Clive Brker. I remember as a youngster reading Books of Blood and Night Visions and later on really getting into Hellraiser.
And I read The Hungry Caterpillar.
I think I first read Books of Blood when I was about 14. That's my favourite one was Midnight Meat Train from that, and that was made into a film in 2008. Books of Blood was a film in 2020. It was quite poorly received. I liked it. But...
A good book?
Mm-hmm.
Was it a good book in your opinion?
Oh, it was a good book. The film...
Not so.
The film had its strong points and its not so strong points, shall we say.
Yeah, it's always difficult going from one to another.
When you've got such belter source material as well, I can't help but feel you can only go one way from there. Nevertheless, Hellraiser. So you watched this for the first time recently?
Yes, I did.
And
yes, I did. Thank you.
Did you like it?
You know what? I don't know if it's the films of the era, whether it's the use of special effects is much more used in films these days. I think
more like visual effects rather than physical.
Yeah, physical effects. I didn't find it as scary as I was expecting to.
No.
Also, it sort of seemed like that it was more about people who were delving into that lifestyle. That sort of.
There are a couple of really nice jump scares
lifestyle. In it. You have to sort of delve into that to get visited by these horrible creatures.
Well, the brother, the brother in it, Frank, he's supposed to be like this archetypal sort of hedonist, isn't he? He says, the quote he says is he sought out the puzzle boxes, nothing in his life was ever enough. But I kind of feel like as soon as he got to the Cenobites and saw who they were and what they did, he was like, nope, I'm out of this. I'm not interested anymore.
I feel like if I was really, into all the kink, I don't think if someone offered me a puzzle box, I'd be really that asked about it. You're like, why you offering me a puzzle box? I'm not a monkey.
I think he just wanted to kind of expand his kind of human experience. And then they turned up as like these interdimensional beings who have no concept of pain or pleasure or heaven or hell. And he's like, he just couldn't hang.
Yeah. It was he just couldn't. A step too far for him.
He thought he could and he couldn't. Yeah. He's not a very good hedonist. He's a bobber job hedonist, isn't he?
The sort of analogy we used. Basically, it's like when you go out on a night out and you just had one drink too many.
Oh, yeah.
Or, maybe 7 drinks too many.
Yeah.
And you're sat in the corner of the club.
You thought you were going to enjoy it. You didn't.
You thought you were going to have the best time. But now you're thinking, if I've gone too far, if I stand up, I'm going to...
You realise
I'm going to throw up. Piss myself or fall over.
You realise you're 35 and you should have been in your pyjamas a while ago.
Yeah.
That's Frank, basically. That's
me every time I go out now.
That's his experience of the Cenobites. The They're one of my favourite horror movie creations, personally, though. It's almost like they're in this state of grace, just watching every human experience go by, and I just think it's really cool the way that they just exist outside of.
I mean, the very cool imagery as well. The main Cenobite.
Pinhead. Well, he's not referred to as Pinhead in this film, but he is still the same character.
He was on the main poster.
Yeah.
Originally, the filmmakers wanted to put the Frank with no skin,
Frank Monster.
Frank Monster. They wanted to put him on the poster, but they said it was too gory.
I definitely think they made the right choice. Not for that reason, but they definitely made the right choice.
Yeah, they think it was also it was also to do with like Clive Barker's choice as well. He
wanted to show off his best creation.
In
my opinion, his best creation.
That goes hand in hand. Hellraiser and Pinhead. It's
definitely.
It's an iconic image.
Yeah, there's been a whole kind of plethora of add-ons to Hellraiser, which I'm not a fan of a series being expanded to that point, to be honest. I kind of feel like it loses its kick a bit towards the end and it gets so diluted.
Is it like 11 or something? I think there's 11.
I'm not entirely sure.
There's 11.
There are too many, in my opinion.
Hellraisers.
I don't know.
That's probably 11 too many.
Do you mean 10 too many? Did you really not like this?
11 more. 11 more.
But and I'm not a fan of things being diluted to that extent.
Yeah, apparently the Cenobites were the design of the movie was based on S&M clubs.
Yeah,
I mean you can kind of see that. It's
all the leather,
all the leather, all the pins, all the sort of torture. I guess it's to do with Frank's
darker
natural wish to go further and beyond because he can't find satisfaction. Yeah,
but he's definitely not about that. Like, as I said, they watch it all go by. He's still very much into human experience, isn't he? Like when Julia shows up and finds him and he's wanting to be made human again, he's not ready to watch any of that go by. He wants to be human. He wants his body back. He wants Julia back.
Yeah,
he wants to eat Larry.
You know what? Like sometimes I just wake up and I think, "Gosh darn it, I just want to eat Larry."
It's like, ladies, if your ex slides into your DMs and he's this disembodied wraith and he wants you to pick up men at bars to feed him, maybe just say no. Just say no. You don't need a man. You don't need a man that badly. I love the fact as well that she doesn't really question it. She's like, "Oh my God, where did you come from? Okay, have some men. I will just feed you them."
Yeah. Oh,
and then later on in the film, about 5 corpses in, she's like, "Frank, you were going to give me an explanation. What you haven't pressed this,
but you were all right with it beforehand.
You haven't pressed this in a while.
Now you're thinking maybe.
Now you're thinking you might ask for the explanation of why a bloodied skeleton is walking around wanting you to feed him people. You didn't think to ask that at the beginning.
And into Kirsty a bit, which is the sort of younger, more like the beautiful sort of.
It's the stepdaughter, isn't it? Julia's stepdaughter, Larry's daughter. Yeah.
She had a different role to play. Hers was sort of the innocent side of everything, but she was funny at acting. I mean, there's such strong lead actors, I think, in this film.
Yeah.
So it's maybe difficult to be on par with them all the time. But she was the one that obviously they had that moment where you're like, why did you go in that room? Like, why didn't you just go in the room where the Hellraisers were, where like the Cenobites were, where they basically said, bring us Frank, and then you'll be fine. And
they said maybe. She said maybe they'll consider it.
Consider it. But she wandered into the other room. Of course she did.
Mm-hmm. We've also got Claire Higgins in this film, a very young Claire Higgins who looks older than she does now, thanks to
hairstyles,
the hairspray,
the hairstyles of the 80s. Gotta love it. Can't go wrong.
Apparently you can. The visuals of this film are just 80s all over, really.
Yeah, but the makeup and stuff is incredible.
That's not to discredit it at all, but it is very, very representative of the time period. I mean, you've got like the special effects
and the music as well.
Yeah, special effects are like goo and stop motion, basically.
So much goo.
Yeah, we gotta love the goo. I mean, the first scene where he gets, solves the puzzle box, goes to where the Cenobites are, and he gets ripped apart by all of the chains. It literally looks like a dog has got us a football. Like, that was my first thought when I first watched this.
And the hooks go in his skin.
Yeah.
And it's just... I mean, it definitely doesn't look real, that bit.
This is not...
I guess that's why it wasn't quite as scary for me.
This is not to degrade the film at all, in my opinion. I mean, I love the film because of this, not despite this. But... and the Frank monster does get better as the film progresses. He gets more fleshed out. No pun intended.
Yeah.
I didn't mean literally fleshed out.
Well, more fleshed out. He gets more fleshed out.
I did notice, though, there are a few nice jump scares in this film, which I don't think I've ever really noticed as much as I did the other day. I think it was because I was actually thinking more about the film when I was watching it, because I was taking notes, and a few of the jump scares actually really got me, which they don't normally, which was good. So I've actually been able to kind of pinpoint where they're trying to put the scary bits in. Like, I'm not very scareable when it comes to film, so I always enjoy a good scare.
There's another thing with Kirsty. Her sort of boyfriend character, he walks into the house and sees all this stuff. He doesn't even, like, act surprised or shocked or, like, in any way, like it's something abnormal. He just walks into the house. There's Cenobites everywhere. The house is falling down. He's just like, Kirsty, you okay? And then they like kill a Cenobite, and then they like hug, and she's smiling. Like
at that point, I'd be screaming.
Oh God! Oh, thank God that's over. It's like you just had like a really bad shit. Now it's done, and you can move on with your life.
To be fair, I watch a lot of horror films, and I think, why are people not doing a mix of screaming and praying, like, constantly? It's like, if that were me, like, I'm not doing that from my house, but I know if I was them in their house, they would be screaming and praying pretty much exclusively, and running out the front door, not to the attic, which is just what they always do. They love an attic.
Yeah, running out the front door.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Out the front door and into someone else's front door.
You wouldn't want to get wet if it's raining, you know. That's probably why.
Yeah, silly, eh? But, yeah, I don't know why it took Julia that long to insist on an explanation from Frank.
No, I love that note. I didn't even think about that. She's literally, like, most of the movie's gone. Just like, maybe now. Maybe now you should tell me.
Another issue I had with this as well is the Cenobites. You know, they talk a big game, or at least we have a big game talked about them. Like, we're interdimensional beings, we're explorers of the universe, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The only thing we really see them do in this film is torture Frank and threaten Kirsty. That's it. We don't really see them do much else.
Not much character progression for the Cenobites.
Yeah, you get a bit of that later, though. I mean, we do see the Pinhead becomes a sympathetic character almost later on in the franchise, which I know I'm not a huge fan of, but I am a fan of that element of character development. But, they have all the good quotes, but I feel like they just kind of...
And I do love that they sort of have that voiceover in the beginning. It's always really strong, dark.
Yeah. Yeah, you find a lot there in this one, and as we're going to get to as well, Candyman. They have kind of big backstories for the villains. They have a purpose. They have a reason. Like, the Cenobites have a very structured kind of purpose for being there. They want to go torture people. They come out with all the good lines, like, we'll tear your soul apart. We'll tear your soul apart. And, Candyman has a similar entrance as well. He's got his big deep voiceover before you even see him. He's got his entrance, everything about it's really cool. Absolutely, when you contrast that with, like, modern horror films, you see that a lot of the big bad in modern horror films doesn't really have as much of a point.
Yeah, I mean, I find that a lot of more modern horror films, they don't start with an explanation about the fact that you're going to be watching a horror film. They basically they'll pretend that things are normal. Yeah. Until something bad happens.
Yeah, like I've recently been watching.
They want to lull people into a false sense of security, but yeah, I know that I'm watching a horror movie. But it's that build up of tension that I think.
Well, I've recently been watching the Paranormal Activity series, and I know that the big bad in that, I mean, if you asked it why it was there, it probably wouldn't know. It'd just be like, I don't know, witches or something. Whereas, as I say, I'm not to degrade any of these films. That's not my intent, but it is a big contrast to the villains of the 80s or the big bads or the main antagonist rather, not protagonist. You can see his side I'm on, can't you? But I like as well that the end of the film kind of wraps it up nicely. You know what I mean?
Well, does it?
I think it does, because Frank fully takes Larry's place in the end, doesn't he? He completely kind of wears his skin. Well, I was going to say almost. He literally wears his skin.
But
I think Julia jumped the shark in letting Frank eat Larry at all. I know that she was reluctant to, but then she was just like, "Oh, go on."
Oh, go on then, eat my husband.
Yeah,
didn't really like him anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But then when they leave the house and she throws the puzzle box.
Yeah, but in the end, it gets...
Spoiler alert, guys. I mean, if you're watching a horror podcast, you probably should expect
how far can you really spoil a film that was released in 1982?
If you've not watched it by now.
If you haven't watched it by now, you have been sleeping on things, my friend. Yeah, but the puzzle box gets picked up out of the fire, doesn't it? By the creepy cricket man from the pet shop.
Creepy cricket man, a character from like another world? Is he another Cenobite?
We don't know, but he does stick his hand in like a reptile tank and eats all the crickets. So we can assume he's not normal with it. Like,
and then he turns into some sort of crazy fire dragon.
Well, yeah, that's always a clue. But yeah, at the end, the puzzle box goes off to find its next victim almost. I really like the way that's wrapped up. It's kind of in the same way as the Cenobites, just kind of...
The last scene sort of ends in that...
Yeah.
With the guy...
The market again.
In a market again.
Yeah, in the kind of the same way that the Cenobites just have no opinion or no idea of pleasure or pain or good or bad. It's like they've dealt with this situation. This was a thing they did, and...
So we could be your angels or your demons.
Yeah, so now they move on to the next thing. They're literally just kind of passing through. And I really like the way it wrapped it up like that.
Yeah, I'm wondering when they're going to be angels, though. Like, I've not seen any angelic behaviour from them just yet.
I don't know, those outfits are pretty good.
Do you think they knitted them at home?
Well, what?
Seeing all the Cenobites like on the days off from torturing.
Nanny Pinhead. Actually, that's a knitting needles. Maybe he really annoyed her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I suppose it would be more like the needles that they would just knitting part of the costume and then bam.
Maybe that's where he keeps them. Maybe he's actually just a knitting fanatic.
He's a pincushion.
Yeah. Anywho, to move on to our other Clive Barker film, Candyman. Candyman was released in 1992. Again with the source material, but unlike Hellraiser, it was not directed and he did not write the screenplay, Clive Barker. It is based on a book from Books of Blood called The Forbidden, which used to be one of my favourites. He wrote this book originally about Liverpool and about the class structure, like the British class structure. There's a lot of social commentary in Candyman.
Yeah, it's even mentioned a lot by the characters.
Yeah.
It's not just something that's sort of offhand in it.
No.
It's literally mentioned by the characters.
Actually, watching this recently, I haven't watched this for a number of years. And, at different stages in my life, I've got completely different things from this film, which is really interesting. It's not kind of just, a straightforward horror film or a scary film. Like, as a kid, I thought it was that. And then in my 20s, I thought, oh, that's a cool film. It's well made. It's interesting. And now now I'm 35 and I get something completely different from it again. So I think that's the mark. Like, I've actually realised how it is really one of my favourite films.
I mean, we start with the original, even just the story of the Candyman in the film itself. He was the son of a man.
And he did really well for himself, and he was, quite well dressed and well educated.
Yeah, which was he was a black man.
Yeah,
a few centuries ago.
Yeah, it looks like the 1800s from the mural on the wall. Just to note, it was transplanted to urban Chicago from Liverpool, just in case we didn't mention that. The premise is basically plays on people's fears and how they demonize certain things in society and how people like to make a bogeyman so that they've got something to blame for the bad things in their life that's going on. So while the Candyman is obviously this supernatural villain, it's not as simple as that. The premise
definitely got a lot of different layers to this movie. It's not just
your
simple.
Well, our main character, Helen, is a student studying urban legends and how they develop and kind of how society views them. And the quote from here is that they're unself-conscious reflections of the fears of urban society, which is interesting. She's investigating the residents in the tower block where Candyman is known to
have killed
hang out. Yeah, she's investigating, and she thinks the legend is how they cope with and explain like hardship in their lives, like people are getting attacked. It's the Candyman, you know.
And she sort of sees it as almost a point of humor.
Yeah,
with her friends, just laughing about it.
Yeah, you actually find this a lot in the film. It's like the white kind of academic characters, the kind of removed from the story of the Candyman. They don't take it seriously. It's a point of humour, a point of interest, a point of study. Whereas to the people who live in this housing estate, Cabrini Green, it's real to them. These fears are real to them, and that's not just in a film. It's like, if you talk about like urban crime to Group A, that will be kind of abstract because they don't experience it. But to Group B, it's real to them, and they're really frightened.
Yeah, there is definitely some mention from the main character, Helen. She gets attacked by a local gang.
Yeah.
When she's investigating the story, a man with a hook.
Going and killing people.
Yeah,
basically.
And so, like, when she gets attacked, she goes to the police. The police then find the man, and he gets arrested.
Yeah. They have like a lineup.
Who may have been responsible for a couple of the different murders, but. But the legend of the Candyman is separate from that. Yeah.
He's not the Candyman. He just walks around holding a hook and attacking people.
Like in this area, what's it called?
Cabrini Green.
Cabrini Green. There's a couple of murders that happen or attacks that happen, and the police do nothing about it, and they even had calls.
Yeah.
About the attacks and the woman screaming. They didn't come. And it's sort of...
But she gets attacked and they're right in there. Yeah, it's the quote that I've got. 2 people get brutally murdered and the cops do nothing. 1 white woman goes in there.
Gets beaten up and...
Yeah, she gets beaten up and then...
all of a sudden it manages to get solved.
All of a sudden it matters. Which, is quite relevant the whole time.
And it's relevant now. Thing that's been
absolutely
going on. I'd say going on this year, but going on for as long as we can.
Yeah, it's just kind of been highlighted this year, but it's not. It doesn't ever not happen. But the quote that I thought was interesting from this is Candyman say, "I came from you." It's like you did. You came from other people's fears and what they think, what they're scared of. As I say, there's a lot of in-depth stuff that you can read into this film. I think that the horror is almost the least interesting thing about this film. I know it's a horror podcast, so that's basically blasphemy, but there we are. Where are we?
Got another classic horror trope in this movie. It's the death of the dog.
The death of the
if
dog.
You see a dog at some point, it's probably gonna die.
Yeah, did we have a dead dog?
Be beheaded.
did we have a dead dog in Hellraiser? I don't think we did.
Not in Hellraiser,
but I think in Candyman definitely, and the other 2 films I'm going to talk about in a separate episode. Dead dogs.
Just dead dogs.
Dead dogs.
Always.
Well,
what's horror movies' problem with dogs? Eh?
In The Thing, it's more
that's more heartbreaking to me than the death of a human. Oh wow, I sound like a psycho.
That's...
kill the dogs, save the dogs. I'm gonna be going on a horror march. Save the dogs.
A horror march. You always feel bad on like kids and dogs though, because it's like they're not involved; they're just kind of there. That's why you feel bad.
I was wondering at like horror movies how they are okay with letting kids be a part of the filming of it. It must be some kids must have been scared to death, or like scarred from some of this. I guess it's very different in the filming of it. really, but it's still putting kids in that situation.
Yeah, well, I read a thing about the filming of It recently, which is similar to that. One of the kids in it, Bill Skarsgård, was talking, and he was like, and I was screaming in this kid's face, and this kid was crying his eyes out, and I felt so bad. And then the yelled cut, and the kid was just like, I really like what you've done with this character. Like, the kid just straight faced, and he was just like,
wow.
But
Kid's got more balls than me.
But there is a remake of Candyman, which I'm quite interested to see. Actually, it was supposed to be out this year, but obviously with the COVID situation and everything going on, it hasn't been released.
About a horror movie.
Yeah.
2020.
Now, the director, Jordan Peele, he directed Get Out as well. He's actually quite a good director. Well, I like him. It was supposed to be out on the 25th of September. And he said he wanted it to be kind of like a community experience almost. He wanted people to go to cinemas and go out and see this film.
Yeah.
And he said he made it to be viewed in a cinema. So it's kind of been scuppered a little bit. But it's going to be out apparently in August next year. But it's not quite a remake. It's air quotes, a spiritual sequel to the original.
Well, when I watched it recently, I did get some popcorn so that I could throw it at the cinema screen. At the TV screen, sorry.
I'm not sure how I feel about spiritual sequel, but I also don't like remakes that much. So it just remains to be seen. It's Tony Todd, who was the original Candyman's given it his blessing, so that's always a good thing.
Okay.
And I have watched the trailer and seen some of the stills, and the new Candyman, which is Yahya Abdul-Mateen, is he looks really good in the role. Like he hasn't got kind of the fairy coat on, any fairy coat.
Well, that fur coat is
but
classic.
He's still sharp. He's still a sharp dresser though in the new one. He still looks good. They still.
It's quite a beautiful man, is Candyman.
He is, you know.
It's weird that I'm attracted to.
It's the face structure, isn't it?
I mean, like I could do without the hook, but he's got style.
Yeah, but what if he was like, no?
And he's got just that
no,
voice.
it's me hook. Yeah,
So like, ooh, like,
everyone loves a bad guy.
smooth. Goes down smooth. So you can't really talk about Candyman without talking about the mirror scenes in that.
Thinking about how many times we're saying his name in this, are we?
Yes. Well,
Does the monitor count?
Obviously, in the movie, the idea is that you say his name 5 times, and then he's supposed to appear in the mirror behind you, breathing down your neck, which
causing all sorts of mayhem.
I mean, without the hook and maybe without the bees, I suppose it wouldn't mind as much.
Nah. So. I mean, everyone's got their own version of the Candyman, though, haven't they? I mean, urban legends are everywhere. Did you have one when you were a kid?
Yes. Well, I think mine was the Bloody Mary one. So in the bathroom mirror, you say 3 times.
3.
Your name 3 times. Yeah,
don't give you much wiggle room, do they?
Does that they don't? No. So I'm not going to say that anymore today, just in case. We had one called Peely, which I was going to say I don't think existed, but I think they might have been pulling your leg with that one.
Yeah, but Peely had one leg, so someone must have pulled his leg at one point as well. I remember he was the scourge of Colomendy. Yeah, I like the way in Candyman as well. At the end, he says Helen 5 times in the mirror. And she appears with a burnt head in this hospital gown. Like she's become the bogeyman to him now. She's the stuff of legend. I thought that was a cool ending. I like it. I like where they went with that.
It's good stuff.
I am really intrigued to see this sequel and to see what they've done. Just what they've done. Because apparently it can stand alone. It's not a straight remake. It's not a straight sequel. I don't know. I'm intrigued. And seeing as my rediscovered love for this film, I hope they haven't made a mess, but I don't think they will have. I think it's going to be at least okay. Hopefully. Well, that brings us to the end of our first episode. I hope you've enjoyed us talking about our favourite, well, my favourite and Rachel's newfound interest in horror films.
You know what? Like it has definitely sparked something in me. Which I didn't think I was capable of in watching a horror movie.
Excellent.
But we'll see what happens because I feel like we're going to get into some more scary.
We'll see what happens when I find some scarier films for Rachel to watch.
There may be screaming.
There may be a reaction. There may be a reaction video.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's time for us to turn out the lights, and we will speak to you next time on Girlfright.
soul apart.